Hello everyone, welcome to physics class for CBSE class 10. The chapter for today's discussion is the human eye and the colorful world, and the topics for discussion are as follows. Number one we have is human eye, that means its constructions and its working. So in this topic we will have to study about what is the working of the human eye. The second topic that we have to study in this chapter is the range of vision of normal human eye. The third topic that we have is known as defects. Defects means the problem that arises in a normal human eye is known as a defect. So the defects of vision and their correction. Correction means how do we correct that defect is known as a correction. The defects are as follows. Number one we have is cataract. Number two, that is known as your myopia. The third defect is hypermetropia, and the last one we have is presbyopia. So these are your four defects of normal human eye. And the last topic for today's discussion will be why do we have two eyes and not just one. So let's first see how does a human eye look like. So this is the picture of a normal human eye. Now, let us see which are the various parts of the normal human eye. So, as you can see, the first part out here is known as your cornea. This outer one, the outer surface is known as your cornea. After that, we have the next part which is known as aqueous humor. It's a fluid which is present in between the area of cornea and the iris. The next part is known as iris, and the gap between these two iris is known as your pupil. Then the next part of a normal human eye is known as this one, that is known as your ciliary muscles. Basically, the ciliary muscles, they hold the normal human eye lens, which is your convex lens. As we know that our normal human eye, it acts like a camera which also has a lens. Similarly, our human eye also has a lens which is your convex lens. So this convex lens, or we can say the human lens, is being held by the two ciliary muscles. Then the next part that we have in the human eye is your vitreous humor. This is the fluid which gives a particular shape to the normal human eye, which is almost like a spherical ball shape. Then the next part that we have in a normal human eye is known as retina. Now what is retina? So retina is a screen on which the image is formed when the light falls on it. This retina is very sensitive to the light. So it consists of several cells which get activated when the light falls on the retina. Mainly, there are two cells in retina which get activated as soon as the light falls on it. They are number one, rod cells, and number two, cone cells. Now we go on to the next part, which is known as your blind spot. Now what is blind spot? So blind spot is basically a place where the light never falls, because it is almost like the opening of all the nerves which are connected to the human brain. So here the light never falls, so this is why it is known as your blind spot. The next part is known as your optic nerve. Now what is optic nerve is? It's a bundle inside which there are numerous types of your nerves running, which connect the various parts of the human eye to the brain. So by now we know that a normal human eye is spherical in shape. Let us talk about its diameter. So a normal human eye diameter is basically 2.3 centimeter. Now what is the meaning of diameter is? The gap between the upper surface and the lower surface, this one is known as your diameter. This length is known as your diameter. So the normal human eye diameter is basically 2.3 centimeter. Now let me talk about the functions of the main parts of a human eye. So the main parts of our human eye are basically iris, pupil, as we have to study the function of iris and pupil together. The next one is your ciliary muscles and the human lens, that is convex lens. So the ciliary muscles and convex lens, the functions we have to study together. The next one is your retina. So these are your main parts whose functions we have to study. Let me begin with the function of iris and the pupil. Now what happens is, when we look at an object, sometimes the amount of, or say intensity of light is more, sometimes it is less. So the adjustment of light entering into the human eye is totally done by the iris, and iris receives that command from the brain. The brain sends some signals to this iris saying that the amount of light in the image is either less or it is either more. So it has to adjust itself accordingly. So if suppose, say for example, the amount of light around us is more, that time this iris which we have, they expand itself, making the gap, that is your pupil, small. Why small? So that if the gap is small, less amount of light can enter and we have a clear picture. Similarly, during the night time, when we are sitting in front of a candle, the amount of light is very less. Again, that time what happens is, the brain sends the signal to the iris saying that the amount of light in the image that is formed on the retina is less. So that time the iris, what it does is, it squeezes itself, making the gap, that is the pupil, wider. If suppose the gap is wider, we will have enough amount of light entering into it and the clear picture will be formed on the retina. So the function of iris and the pupil is to maintain the intensity of light of the image that is formed on retina. Now let me talk about ciliary muscles and the human lens, that is your convex lens. So as we can see, from far object to the near object. Now how it is done? This is done by the adjustment of the ciliary muscles. And we know that our human lens is a jelly-like structure which can be compressed and which can be left, which means it keeps on changing its shape depending upon how it is being guided by the ciliary muscle. If suppose, say for example, we are looking at a far object, that time the ciliary muscles, they squeeze themselves, that is the upper one squeezes itself, lower one squeezes itself. It means it leaves the lens and the lens becomes free, that is thin. When we are looking at a far object, the lens is thin. Why? The reason is, the light which is coming from the far, it gets refracted a small amount. So if suppose the lens is thin, which means the light which is already refracted, after passing through thin lens, gets refracted a less amount and it directly falls on retina, making a perfect image. Similarly, if suppose we are looking at any near object, like say for example I am looking at a near object, that time the distance between the object and the eye is less, so there is no refraction. So if there is no refraction, that time these ciliary muscles, they expand themselves, the upper one as well as the lower one, which means it presses the human lens and makes it a thick one. Now why thick one? The reason is, since the light which is coming from the object to the eye, the distance is very less, there is no refraction. So if suppose you have a thin lens, the refraction will be very slow and the image will not be formed on retina. So for looking at near objects, the ciliary muscles, they expand themselves, making the human lens thick. So this thick lens will help to refract the light little bit faster and fall exactly, make it fall exactly on the retina. So that is the function of your ciliary muscles and your convex lens, to adjust to see the object which is at far or which is at the near place. Next one is your retina. Now what is retina? Basically a screen on which the light is formed and image is seen is known as your retina. So when the light falls on the retina, I have already discussed that it consists of many cells. So the main two cells of retina are number one, which is known as your rod cells, and number two, which is known as your cone cells. Now, what is this rod cell and what is this cone cell? So when the light falls on the retina, these two cells become active. The function of the rod cell is to tell you the intensity of light, and the function of the cone cell is to predict or tell you the color of image. That is, what type of color is in the image is being told by the cone cells, and how much is the light, is it bright or is it very dull, is being told by the rod cells. So these two cells, they are responsible for telling the intensity of light and the color of the image, which is sent to the human brain via electric signals. So these are the functions of the main parts. The main parts like iris, pupil, ciliary muscles, human lens, which is your crystalline jelly-like structure, that is your convex lens, and the retina. As we have already discussed about the ciliary muscles, let us proceed to the next topic, that is range of vision of normal human eye. So the nearest point that a normal human eye can see is 25 centimeter, and the farthest point that a normal human eye can see or the vision is infinite. Now let me talk about an example. Infinite. Why the farthest point is infinite? Because we can see the stars. The stars are not in our galaxy, not in our solar system. It is in other galaxy. But still we can see, which is known as your infinite. So as we can see the stars which are at infinite, our farthest point becomes infinite. Now, why the nearest point is 25 centimeter? Now the question is, you must be asking yourself, sir, we can see the pen when it is placed in front of our human eye. But let me explain you. If suppose you are placing a pen or a pencil in front of a human eye, you can see the pen, but it is not clear. It is blurred. But if suppose I take this pen a little bit far from my human eye, what happens is, when this pen is at an exact 25 centimeter away from my eye, I can see the pen very clear. That's the reason the nearest point is taken as 25 centimeter. The next topic of discussion is, why do we have two human eyes instead of one? Now, why do we have two human eyes? The question is, and its answer is the first one, to have a wider range. Wider range means we can see at an angle of 180 degree. That is, from this left hand side corner to the right hand side corner, we can see the objects which are in the room or in around us. The second answer is to find or to calculate the accurate distance or the accurate position of the object which is placed in front of our human eye. If suppose I close my one eye and then try to calculate the distance of any object that is placed in front of me, I won't be able to calculate its correct value. But if suppose I am looking at any object with my two eyes open, I can directly, clearly find its accurate position. Let us now move on to the next part of the chapter, that is defects of human eye and its correction. Defects means the problems that are occurred or happen to a normal human eye is known as your defect. So how it can be corrected is known as your correction. So the first defect that we have is known as cataract. Now what is cataract? Cataract means a layer which is formed, or we can say a milky or cloudy layer which is formed in front of a normal human eye is known as, this type of sickness is known as cataract. Now, how can a person get rid of cataract, or how can the correction be done in case of cataract? So, the person can go for two ways. The first one is surgery. In surgery, what happens is the doctors, they have a special designed knife which is made by using the property, the chemical property of diamond. Why diamond? Because we know that diamond is the hardest substance. So using its property, a knife has been designed whose edges are very sharp, and this sharp edged knife is used to remove the layer from the human eye, after which the person can see the things normally. The second is known as transplantation. Now, why transplantation is, if suppose the layer has become thick and has got attached to the human eye, that time the doctors, they suggest to go for the transplant. So in transplant, the person has to look for the donor eye, and once the donor eye is available, the person again can see the objects clearly. So this is the first defect, that is known as cataract. Let's move on to the next defect, that is known as myopia, which is also known as nearsightedness or farsightedness. The second disease that we have, or the second defect of human eye, is myopia, which is also known as nearsightedness or short-sightedness. Now, what is myopia? So myopia means the sickness in which the person can see the near objects clearly, but the far objects are not clear, is known as myopia. Now, why does this sickness happen? The reason is, when the person suffering from myopia, he looks at a far object, that time the light entering into his eyes fall on the human lens. But during this time, that is during this sickness, what happens is, the ciliary muscles, they are always in an expanded form, because of which the human lens is always and always thick. Now, what does the thick lens do is, it refracts the light, little bit faster, because of which what happens is, the lights, they do not fall on the retina. So if the light, they do not fall on the retina, no images form, which means the object cannot see far. But since the ciliary muscles are always expanded and the lens is always thick, due to which what happens is, the person can see the near objects. Like sometimes we have a student sitting in the last bench and he has a problem, or he keeps on complaining, sir or ma'am, I cannot see the board clearly, whatever you have written is not clear. So the person, we can understand, is not actually acting, but he is suffering from a disease which is known as myopia. Now, how do we do the correction of myopia is, we can place a concave lens. In front of the defected human eye. Now, why the concave lens is? The concave lens makes the light take little bit far, which means it diverges the light little bit, and then those diverted light fall on our human eye, which is a thick one. The focal length has changed and it has become thick. Now, once the light passes through the concave and falls on the human eye, the light then have the potential of falling on retina and the objects are clear and the images form. So this way, in case of myopia, the correction can be done by using a concave lens which diverts the light little bit away, and those diverted light fall on the human lens which is thick, and these thick lights, they refract the light exactly at retina, making the vision of image very clear. So that is how we can correct. That is in case of your myopia. Now let's move on to the next defect, which is known as your hypermetropia. It is also known as farsightedness or long-sightedness. Now, what is hypermetropia? So, hypermetropia means a disease or a sickness which occurs to a person where the person can see the far objects clearly, but the near objects are not clear. Like we have seen few people in and around us where they are sometimes reading the newspaper not closer to their eye but placing it far. So that type of sickness or disease is known as your hypermetropia. Now, why does this sickness happen to a human being? The reason is, in this disease, the ciliary muscles, they are always squeezed. Squeezed means the lens is free and it is always thin. Now, due to thin lens, the near vision is not clear, because we know that if a object is placed at near, that time we can see the near objects only if the ciliary muscles they are expanded and the human lens is thick, because the distance of the object and the human eye is less, due to which refraction does not take place. So the total refraction has to take place in the human eye, which has to be thick. But in case of hypermetropia, what happens is the ciliary muscles, they are always squeezed and the lens is thin. So if a person looks at near object, the light enters into the thin human lens, because of which there is a refraction but which is very slow, and the refraction after passing through your human lens does not form the image on the retina, but it forms the image behind the retina. This type of disease is known as your hypermetropia. Now, as you can see in this picture, this is your normal human eye. When the object is near, the distance, the light coming through that object passes through the human lens and falls exactly on retina. But if the person is suffering from hypermetropia, the image that is near the human eye, the light passing through or coming through that object passes through the thin human lens because of the hypermetropia, and because of the thin human lens, what happens is the lights they get refracted in a very slow amount and does not fall on retina, but it falls behind the retina, because of which the person cannot see the near object. So how the correction can be done is by placing a convex lens in front of the defected human eye. So if you place a convex lens, what does the convex lens do is it converges the light a little bit further inside, and those converged light enter into our thin lens, and the image, that is the light, they clearly fall on the retina, making or producing a clear image. So this is how we can get rid of the disease or the sickness that is called hypermetropia. The last defect of human eye is known as presbyopia. So what is presbyopia? Presbyopia means a disease or a sickness in which the person cannot see the near as well as the far objects clear. Basically, this disease happens to old age people. The people whose age is more than 60, they suffer from this type of disease, that is presbyopia. How it can be corrected is by using a special type of lens which is known as bifocal lens. Now, what is the meaning of bifocal lens? Bifocal lens means using two lenses of two different focal length. For farther objects, we have to use concave lens, and for the nearer objects, we have to use the convex lens. That's the reason. Since in same specs or same glass we are using two lenses, that type of a spec or that type of a glass is known as bifocal lens. So in this class, we have studied about the human eye, its working, the functions of the main parts of human eye, and then we moved on to the next topic, the last one, that was defects of human eye. I hope you enjoyed our class. See you till we meet in the next video. Thank you.